I awoke to the sound of banging. I covered my head with my comforter. "Just 5 more minutes," I grumbled. It was probably my husband fixing the window panes. What day is it? Saturday? I thought. I supposed that made sense. However, did it have to be... what time is it? 2 o'clock in the afternoon! I could think of worse alarm clocks than Danny working on the house at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. I rolled out of bed, taking the blanket with me, and walked to the window. I drew the curtain, expecting to see my husband working on installing shutters on the windows. Instead, the window was boarded up on the outside. The boards made it impossible to open the window. Why was it boarded up? The gap between the boards invited me to peer between them, but the view was obscured by a foggy film of some kind. If Danny was out there, he was long done with the bedroom window. I had apparently slept through his work. My bare feet patted on the hardwood floor as I exited the bedroom. The window in the hallway had also been boarded up on top of the glass. My heart began to pound. "Danny?" I pointed my call down the stairs in hopes I could get a call back. I was only greeted by silence. The door to my son's room was open, so I went in looking for him. "Caleb?" The room was empty, but his window had been boarded up and filmed as well. The air felt thin. Was it the panic of being alone? Was the boarded-up windows causing anxiety? Or was it the film wrapped around the house? My head felt light, and my lids were heavy. I'd just woken up, but the lack of air made it difficult to stay awake. The blanket was left in Caleb's bedroom on my way out of the room and down the stairs. The front door. That had to be my only way out of the mostly empty house. At the bottom of the stairs, I almost crashed into the door with the force of my momentum. The door did little more than wiggle in my grip. Locked? What the hell? The door couldn't technically be locked on the inside, so I unlocked it and opened it to reveal the storm door. The glass of the storm door had been covered in boards as well. My lungs tightened, trying to suck in as much oxygen as possible. My feet thundered underneath me as I made my way towards the kitchen. Normally, I'd worry about the sound echoing into the basement, but something told me that neither Caleb nor Danny were in the house at all, let alone in the basement. The basement! In the kitchen, there was a door that led to the basement and a door in the basement that led outside. I made use of the former. My hurried steps were unnecessarily loud, coming down the creaking steps into the basement. The light grew dim as I went further underground. The temperature dropped a good 10 degrees. I rubbed my upper arms and made my way to the back door. Through the little window, it was already dark with board coverage. My heart sank. The last way out of the house was struck out. I began to work out, A, why my family wasn't here, and B, why the orifices of the house had been boarded up and covered in thick film. Was it to prevent me from leaving, or to prevent someone from coming in? The air felt even thinner. The memory from school that a person can only survive without air for 3 minutes. If I had 5 more minutes of air, I could kick the door down through the boards, but I feared I didn't have the oomph to do it. My fingertips had turned blue, and I flexed my hands into fists to try and get the blood to flow, but nothing seemed to help. If anything, the blue was sprinting across my hands and wrists. I could only imagine how my face looked. 5 more minutes, I pleaded to the forces that be. I opened the basement door, which swung inward to reveal a barrier of board. They'd been nailed to the frame rather hurriedly, so they weren't perfectly placed. Upon inspection, I noticed that not even the nails were hammered all the way in. My steps were staggered as I prepared myself, and I thrust a kick at the knee-level board. It gave way right through the cellophane. Air rushed into the room from the new hole. My lungs were overwhelmed, and I started to cough. Through my cough, I kicked again and hit the upper board. It swung and hung by one nail, but I could almost fit through the hole I'd made. Just one more. I took a breath and held it, throwing one more kick at the upper board. The board split in half, making a splintery gateway, but passable nonetheless. I gripped the plastic that the house had been wrapped in and tore it wider so I could fit through. Stepping over the lower boards and ducking under the upper boards required more dexterity than I had. My foot caught the lower boards that I had not kicked, and I tumbled out into the sunshine. My skin began to sizzle in the sunlight. It went from 1st degree to 2nd degree to 3rd degree burns in a matter of seconds, and it forced a howl from my recently reoxygenated lungs. My skin turned a crispy black, and lack of oxygen in my blood and influx of outside oxygen seemed to make me particularly flammable. I burst into flame, and my howl dwindled into a whine as I tumbled to the ground and rolled. I hoped that if I rolled, the flames would go out. They did not. Please remember me as I was, not as lonely and crispy.